Hello everyone. Today we are going to look at India and Africa relations. So before starting with the relations, first of all we must understand the geographical position of Africa. To study any country with respect to international relations, it is very important to first understand their geographical location, because their location is going to decide a lot many things, which is also the study is known as geopolitics. ठीक है, जो geopolitics है, it is totally based on the positioning of a particular country. Here, like for an example, USA, it is bordered by oceans on the two sides, therefore it is going to have a different relations with the other nations. It is going to have different type of economic relations, security relations with respect to different countries. Vis-a-vis, as if compared with Bhutan, which is a landlocked country, or Afghanistan, which is again a landlocked country. So therefore, as per the basis of their geography, the relations that are going to be built by that nation are going to be different. So first of all, let us understand the geography of Africa. Okay, this is beautiful Africa. Okay, it is surrounded by oceans on all the four sides. Basically, it is Atlantic Ocean, here it is Indian Ocean, again ocean to the south of Africa, and in the north we are having Mediterranean Sea. Okay. If you look at this particular peninsula, Sinai Peninsula, it is connecting Africa with Asia. This is Middle East, this is basically Asia, India. Okay. And above this, above the Mediterranean Sea, we are having Europe. This is basically Europe. Okay. Here it is Portugal, and here it is Spain. Okay. This is Italy, then Greece, Turkey. Okay. So this is the geography. Okay. Above we are having Europe, to the east we are having Asia, this is Africa. On both sides we are having ocean, down also, south also we are having ocean, and in the north we are having Mediterranean Sea. Now the most important locations, or we can say the most important choke points for trading or for going or passing through the seas are: number one, Strait of Gibraltar. Now this Strait of Gibraltar, on north of it we are having Spain, on south of it we are having Morocco. And as you go to the Mediterranean Sea, then there is Gulf of Suez, the Suez Canal, you come to the Red Sea, and then again there is Strait of Bab al-Mandeb. Okay? And then you come to Gulf of Aden, and then you enter the Indian Ocean. Okay? So if India have to export something from India, now if we have to export something to Europe, then what is the route that we are going to have? So our route would be like, for an example, we are sending from Mumbai, so it may go, one of the routes is that we go through Indian Ocean, we go to Strait of Bab al-Mandab, then we go to Red Sea, use Suez Canal to cross to the Mediterranean Sea. From Mediterranean Sea, either we can go to any of these countries, we can go to Turkey, or we can use Strait of Gibraltar to go to Britain. Okay? This is one of the routes. Okay? So these are the important choke points with respect to Africa: Strait of Gibraltar, this Strait of Bab al-Mandab. Okay? Clear hai this part? Now let's come to the India-Africa relations. First of all, we are going to look at the history of Africa. Now in Africa, it is considered that the first men were born in Africa, or the first men appeared in Africa. The second important thing is that the Egyptian civilization was prevalent in the same time when India was having our Indus Valley civilization. So both these civilizations were parallel to each other, and both were Bronze Age civilization. They were having trade relations with each other also. Next, as we go or as we progress by the 1800s, there was imperialism in Africa. Now, why there was imperialism in Africa? For European countries, the most important country was India. They wanted to come to India, but as we have seen in our geography, the land route which they were using for trading with India was this. The land route that they were using to trade with India was this, but because of Arab dominance over this route, Europeans were facing difficulties to trade with India, especially after the conquest of Constantinople, that is Istanbul. Okay. Once it was being taken over by the Muslim rulers, then they started having the religious conflict between Christianity and Muslims. So by the time of 1450, they started having a problem to trade directly with India. The Muslim kingdoms, they were charging very high taxes from the Europeans, or they were asking them to convert to Islam so that there could be a favorable trade. And that was the time when the Europeans started finding an alternative route to reach India. So the route that they found was first of all like this. They have to go all the way to India like this. But later on, by the 1850s, they came to know about this Suez Canal. Sorry, 1870s, they came to know about this Suez Canal, and then they changed their route like this. Clear? Okay. So throughout this time period of 1700s and 1800s, when they were traveling from Europe to India, they wanted certain locations where they can stay. They can stay for some time with their ships and material safely along this long path, because this is very long path na. वो यहाँ से start हुआ उनका चलना, from Europe they have started moving, and then they are coming all the way down south to Africa and then going through this way. Therefore, they wanted some places in the coastal area where they can safely land their ships and their material, and they can peacefully rest for some days before restarting their journey. Therefore, what happened that by the time of 1880, the coastal area was being colonized by the European nations. Whether it was United Kingdom, whether it was Italy, it was Spain, Portugal, Germany, they all started, Netherlands, Dutch, they all started getting the coastal areas. All these coastal areas, they started conquering them. They started taking these coastal areas. Here it was Mauritius, Mauritius, small islands, so that they could act as a safe harbor for them. Clear hua? So this is how the imperialism in Africa started. But they were reluctant to go inside the continent. They have only colonized the coastal areas, but they were reluctant to go inside the continent because they used to call Africa as a dark continent due to lot of humidity and rain. Because if you see Africa, the equator, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, all three went through the middle of the Africa. Therefore, majority part of Africa, leaving the northernmost and the southernmost part, is more of a humid climate, hot climate. Therefore, they were not ready to enter the African mainland. Also, the Africa, because of being in the tropical region, was having lot of vegetation. They were having equatorial rainforest. Therefore, because of those dense forests, they again were afraid to enter the interiors of the continent. But what happened? Two important things started happening with respect to Africa. One was paper partition. Paper partition was that rather than going and conquering the Africa, they started partitioning the Africa among themselves on the paper itself. Okay, this is England territory, this is going to be the Italy territory, this is going to be the France territory, this is going to be the German territory, Netherlands territory. This was how they were doing. Okay. Now the sole purpose for this was because Industrial Revolution kick started in the 1850s in many of the European countries. Before 1850s, only it was confined to Britain. But after 1850s, it started happening in other countries also, like France, Italy, Germany, because 1850s is the time period when Italy and German unification was completed. by 1850, 1870 is the time period when Italy and German unification happened, and then they started doing militarization, they started doing industrial revolution, and for that they all needed two things. Number one, they needed raw material. Number two, they needed market. So for these two things, Africa was very precious place. Therefore, they started doing paper. They started doing their paper partition. Another important thing is that they also started taking slaves from here. They started capturing Africans, and they started treating them as their slaves to do manual works in the plantation in different parts of the world. Now, if you look at the geography of the Europeans basically have a temperate climate. They live in a very cold climate. But when they came to India, when they came to East Indies, when they went to West Indies, Brazil, these regions where they were doing the plantation, there the climate was hot and humid. Therefore, they needed slave, and they started capturing the Africans and started treating them as slaves. This was a very ill practice, which was unfortunately being done by the Europeans, by the USA also, and for the liberation of slaves only, the American Civil War happened. As you know, Abraham Lincoln, he was the master to liberate the slaves over there. So one thing that we have seen, it was paper partition. The second important thing that happened, it was Berlin. It was Berlin Conference. Now, this Berlin Conference happened in the year 1884 to 85. This Berlin Conference was called by the then most important diplomat, that is Ottoman Bismarck. Now, Bismarck was one such figure which has predominant role in the world history in the 1800s. He was the brain behind the Italy and German unification. If he wasn't there, then Germany's and Italy unification would have not been completed. He was a very sharp-minded diplomat. So when in 1870s he defeated France and completed the German unification and Italy unification, he wanted to keep France out of the European politics. And subsequently to that, he also wanted France to be kept away in the other continents, especially in the Africa, because Germany, as their unification happened very late, their industrial revolution started happening very late. Therefore, they were late in the race of colonization, and the only reason where they could colonize for their raw material and market was in Africa continent. Therefore, Bismarck, he was the one who called this Berlin Conference, and here he established, with the other European rulers, they established the rules with which they are going to colonize Africa. And on the basis of these two things, we can say that by the 1880, 90% of the Africa was ruled by Africans, but by 1900, all Africa except Ethiopia and Liberia was colonized. By 1900, but within 20 years, they colonized the whole Africa. Whether it was on paper or it was physically, but they colonized the whole of Africa. I hope you have understood till now. Now, why not these two countries, Ethiopia and Liberia? Ethiopia was a country who defeated Italy in somewhere about 1880s. They defeated Italy. Ethiopia was also known as Abyssinian country, Abyssia. Now, Liberia was one such country where the liberated American slaves settled, and therefore the USA made sure that Liberia should not be colonized by any European country. Liberia was one such country on the western coast of Africa where the liberated American slaves, they wanted to go back to their African continent, but since they have lost their roots, therefore America or the American government allowed them to settle in a country called Liberia, and USA made sure that none of the European countries will colonize Liberia. So it was directly under the control of USA without colonizing it. I hope you have understood this part. Now, what is the interest of Europe? As I have already told you, one is that they wanted colonies from Africa so that they could have raw material as well as market. Second one is that they wanted slaves for slave trading. Third, they wanted Suez Canal. They wanted the access to the Suez Canal. So 1869, France was a country who started building Suez Canal with the then government of the Egypt region. Clear? I hope this is clear. Now African nation, there was one important incident that happened in Africa which became one of the causes of First World War, and that is Moroccan crisis. Let us understand what is Moroccan crisis. First, let us go to the map. This region is Morocco. And this Strait of Gibraltar, this is an important passage or important route which is connecting Europe to the India and the other eastern nations. It is a very important route, because if you are not having control on this part, or whosoever country would be having control of this part, they would be controlling the Suez Canal also. So let us go to the Moroccan crisis. It happened in 1906. Now let us understand, this is very important concept. Please focus over here. That here, let's suppose it is Morocco, where we are having Strait of Gibraltar. And on the other side, we are having Egypt, which is having Suez Canal. And as I told you that by the time period of 1870, Otto Bismarck outcasted France from the European politics. This was very important for Germany to improve its industrial revolution and to keep its interest safeguarded. Therefore, Bismarck, using his diplomatic techniques, outcasted France from the European politics. This was the same time when France was building Suez Canal, but fell short of the finances, and then France approached Britain. So Britain came and started supporting this Suez Canal. And Morocco by that time was under France. There basically before this there was one important thing, that an open door policy was being adopted by the European countries with respect to the Strait of Gibraltar. Means each European nation would be allowed to pass through the Strait of Gibraltar. Morocco would be kept under France, but it would be free for all the European countries to go and do trade in the Morocco. So this was an open door policy. It was decided at Madrid conference. This Madrid conference happened in the year 1882. But what happened, that since France was outcasted and later on France needed financial support for building Suez Canal, so therefore they requested Britain to help them to build Suez Canal, and in that mutual understanding both get closer to each other, and then they themselves decided that Suez Canal would be under the Britain and Morocco will go under the exclusive jurisdiction of France. Now, mandate, it was against open door policy, what was decided at the Madrid conference. It was totally against that. But they made a mutual understanding. Egypt, which was earlier under the France, went under Britain, and in return to it, France took Morocco, and both of these two countries started supporting each other. Now, this was the time in 1906. It was decided in the year 1906, and this was the time when Germany felt ashamed of themselves, and they started opposing this thing. They started opposing this kind of relation between the France and Britain. कि आप एक particular choke point को hold कीजिए, and the other country would be holding another choke point, because these two are the very important choke points. ठीक है, for doing trade with the Asian nations. ठीक है, clear this much. ठीक है, so Italy opposed, and subsequently to the Italy opposition, the European leaders, they sit together. They were deciding what should be a peaceful resolution, but Germany started showing a very aggressive stand, and unfortunately Italy, who was supporting Germany, changed its sides and went to Britain and France. Now this is very important. Whenever in life you have friends, your friends should be 100% genuinely supporters of you. Italy, who was supporting Germany till this point, because with the help of Germany, Italy could complete its unification, but now unfortunately they changed. Italy changed its position, and they went to Britain and France. So Germany was shocked, but at the same time Germany was defeated in this peace conference, and Germany have to go empty-handed. But subsequently what happened in the year 1908? In the year 1908, Young Turk movement happened. Young Turk movement happened, and this happened in the Morocco state. Now Young Turk movement, basically what happened, that a lot of Turk people who were living in the Morocco, they started asking for liberation. Now when this incident happened, Germany saw an opportunity, and then they came and they placed their warship Panther near the Morocco, which acted as a resistance, which acted as a pressure on the France and Britain, and therefore France and Britain have to listen and dictate as per the terms of Germany. So when they were settling the issue, it happened that Germany in compensation got French Congo. French Congo, which was earlier a French territory, a French colony of Africa. It was given from Africa to Germany, and Germany was satisfied, and Germany peacefully solved this issue. Now this is one important incident where we must understand that for Europeans, liberation, independence was not important. For Europeans, only the race for colonization, only the race for building their own economy was more important than the independence of the local people, and this was the biggest example of that. Then subsequently later on, after the Second World War happened, then UNO established one organ which is called as Trusteeship Council. Second important organization that started building after post Second World War was NAM, Non-Alignment Movement. Now under India, it was one very important organization, NAM. Then third was Pan-African Congress. Now these three organizations, they started asking for independence for the African countries. They started asking for independence for the African countries. Who three organizations? UNO's Trusteeship Council, NAM, Non-Alignment Movement, and third, the Pan-Africa Congress. So with this, during that time when they were asking for their independence, Pan-Africanism, this concept emerged, that is that all people of Africa united by their same culture and heritage. So this was the time period when Africa, from being a nation, from being a continent, it started coming together. Therefore you will see right now African Union is one such organization which is very compact, which is having around 54 members, but still they are very shared, they are very close to each other. Clear this part. Now let us go to the basis of relation. Now when India is having relations with Africa, what are the important bases of relation? Number one, we are having shared values. For an example, non-violence is one such value which was preached by India's Mahatma Gandhi also, and South Africa's Nelson Mandela also. Second, we are having mutual respect to each other. We are having a lot of mutual respect. This mutual respect was seen in 1950s when NAM was kick-starting. But unfortunately in 1962, when China attacked India, some of that respect got deteriorated, and China was able to emerge as a big player in Africa and replaced India from Africa at that time during 1960s. Third important thing is that India and Africa both have common struggle with respect to independence and against the European colonizers. Then India and Africa again are having something very much common, is South-South cooperation. Now, what is this South-South? Basically, the Europeans, the West countries, they have divided the world in North versus South. North are those countries basically whose economy is very developed, so they call themselves North, and the countries whose economy is developing or in the stage of less developed, they are put in the South category. Sorry. So both India and Africa are categorized as a southern countries. Therefore, it is very important to have South-South cooperation, that is Africa-India cooperation, for building the relations. So these are the four pillars on whose basis we are building our India-Africa relations. Now let us come to the significance. What is the significance, or what is the importance, or what are the areas of cooperation between India and Africa? So first is political. Now, as I told you, we are having South-South cooperation. So India can be a voice of global South, means all the nations of the South, all the less developed economies, all the nations with the less developed economies. So India can be a voice of those countries. And thankfully we are doing very well on this particular aspect. Second important thing, recently, or the last year itself, in 2023, India was able to include African Union as a member to the G20. Now, third, why we need Africa and African Union? Africa or the African Union is constituting somewhere about 54 nations, 54 countries out of 200. Now, they institute a big portion, and if we are able to help them, so they in return can help India to get a permanent seat at United Nations Security Council. So they can help India to secure a permanent seat. Clear this much? So these are the political significances. Now let's go to the economic significances. Since in India we are trying to do Make in India, so Africa can be a very important or very attractive destination for our exports. It can be a very good destination for our exports. Number two, food security. So with respect to the food security, India have imported pulses and oil seeds at the time of distress in India, when our pulses were getting depleted and the prices were rising high. So we have imported pulses and oil seeds from Africa. Now third, at WTO, both India and Africa can do mutual cooperation. Now, how it will be helpful? Because like for an example, fisheries subsidy or the agriculture subsidies. Since India and Africa both are in the developing stage, therefore the government need to provide a large amount of subsidy in comparison to the Western nations. But WTO was trying to fix a particular limit which could have hampered both our agriculture families as well as the poverty and hunger schemes. The schemes which were trying to eradicate the poverty and hunger. Clear? Now some facts, that African Union is India's fourth largest trading partner, and India is fifth biggest investor in Africa, and it brings about 20% of the FDI. Clear this part? Now third important is geostrategic and geopolitical. or you can say defense and security. As we have seen, African Union, on one side of it we are having Atlantic Ocean, on the other side we are having Indian Ocean. There is an important trade route that passes through Africa, the north of Africa, through Strait of Bab al-Mandab and the Strait of Gibraltar using Suez Canal. Therefore, it is very important to have security and defense and good defenses in this part. Yeah. So India is one such country which always want a freedom of navigation and security in this particular region, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. In the Indo-Pacific region, we needed a freedom of navigation and top-notch security. So with respect to that aim, let us understand what all India is doing. Number one, India is actively involved in peacekeeping efforts. India is actively involved in peacekeeping efforts. Now UNO sends their peacekeeping mission whenever a country is having some type of internal problem or the external problems. Now politically, Africa is very much unstable due to tribal issues, due to religious issues, due to governance issues. They start fighting among themselves, and therefore UN have to send a lot of peacekeeping missions. And in those peacekeeping missions, India constitute a major strength of Indian Army. Second is that we are training Africa's security personnel. Third, terrorism. Now, after the collapse of Libya, somewhere about the year 2010, when this Libya collapsed, the arms, drugs, all these things, they started proliferating to the Sahel regions. What is Sahel region? The north, the topmost north is the Sahara region, and south to that is the Sahel region. So these arms, they started proliferating in the Sahel countries, and there we could see a lot of terrorism started building up, like ISIS, Boko Haram, and the country like Nigeria, they are very much affected to that particular things. So with respect to terrorism, India can seek the support of the African nations as well as the African Union for CCIT. Now, what is CCIT? It is Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. Now, it is one thing which India has been asking UN to implement. CCIT, if UN implement it, it would be very easy for the nations to control the terrorism in the different parts of world. But unfortunately, due to resistance by some countries, obviously by Pakistan and China, India is not able to come out with the CCIT at the UNO. Now, next is sea lanes of communication. Now, sea lines of communication, as I told you, the two important choke points, that is Strait of Bab al-Mandab, then Suez Canal, and then Strait of Gibraltar. These three sea lanes of communication. So these three sea lanes of communication are very important, so that we could develop freedom of navigation and security in the Indian Ocean. Next is piracy. Again, the Horn of Africa, that is the place where piracy is very much predominant, and India has been seen as a first active responder against the piracy. So with respect to security, India have installed radar system. These radar systems have been installed in the places of like Mauritius, Seychelles, Madagascar. India is building its naval and air base at the Assumption Island. Clear this much? Now next is development. So we are having Asia Pacific Corridor. Now this is Asia Pacific Corridor is an initiative of India and Japan to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. ठीक है, an initiative, this is an initiative by India and Japan. In this particular initiative, the main focus are to, number one, economic development of Asia and Africa with the help of different world banks like ADB, AIIB, or the World Bank or the IMF. ठीक है. Second important thing is that India and Japan wants a free and secure Indo-Pacific region. There should be no halt in the navigation. This is basically to counter China's hegemony in the South China Sea. Generally, what China does, that China says that this South China Sea is the territory, or it is an extended territory of China, and China tries to dominate over it. But even the international courts have ruled against this particular dominance of China, and other countries have also shown their strength to tackle China. So with respect to that, India and Japan wants a free and safe Indo-Pacific region. ठीक है, clear है इतना. Second important thing is that we are having Indian technical and economic cooperation. Indian technical and economic cooperation. So here India is trying to do capacity building and technology transfer. Capacity building and technology transfer. Now India's main focus is in the sectors of telemedicine and teleeducation. Telemedicine and teleeducation. Another important development is solar mamas. What is solar mamas? So India, or the Indian government, is training African rural women. Indian government is training African rural women so that they could install solar equipments in the Africa region. Now this is an important initiative because it is going to be a eco-friendly initiative, and it comes under the International Solar Alliance also. Okay? So with this, we are showing to the world that India is very progressive, India is very environment friendly. Okay? Clear this much? Next is cultural and people-to-people relations. Cultural and people-to-people relations. As I have already told you that we are having trade relations since the time of Indus Valley civilization. Since the time of Indus Valley civilization, then there was Silk Route, which was taking the exports and imports from India to the other countries, and from other countries to India. So Africa was also one of the nations through which, or to a particular destination, that the material was going. Okay. Next important is NAM. NAM has been very predominant, or NAM was a very important organization with respect to Africa. Why? So post World War, post Second World War, the world was divided into two poles, which was USA and USSR. USA was a capitalist country, USSR was a communist country, and both of these two nations, they were fighting among themselves, and this was called as Cold War. During this Cold War, they were trying to persuade the African nations to take their sides, to pick their sides. NAM was one organization which came, which was highlighting the point that on every issue, every nation should decide in a sovereign way, and should not go to any one side. Okay? Should not go to either USA or USSR. Rather, they should decide on each and every issue in a different way. Okay? Therefore, NAM, it came as a rescue for the African nations who were new to independence. They have started, or they were just new to gain their independence, and both nations, that is USA and USSR, were trying to dominate them. So NAM was a place where they could secure themselves, they can secure their independence, they can secure their sovereignty. Okay? Third important thing is that music, dance, art, cuisine of both India and Africa are being liked by each other. Okay? Next important thing is diaspora. A lot of Indians are living in Africa, and a lot of Africans are studying and working in India. So there is a good exchange of diaspora also. Okay? Next is nuclear energy. Now, as we know that India is a energy deficit country. Therefore, India needs to expand its energy base. Therefore, India needs a lot of different types of energy bases. One such base is nuclear energy. For building the nuclear power plants, India need uranium, but India doesn't have, so India have to buy uranium. One such country where India could buy at a low price is Namibia. But Namibia have signed a treaty called as Treaty of Pelindaba. Treaty of Pelindaba. It is somewhat similar to the NPT treaty. Okay? So with this treaty, they are trying to do that African Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty. So basically, they are trying to have Africa a nuclear weapon free zone. But since India have not signed neither NPT nor NSG, therefore India faced difficulty to trade or to export to import uranium from Namibia. Okay? Namibia is reluctant to supply their uraniums to India because they have signed this treaty, but India is not a signatory to neither NSG nor NPT. But thanks to the NSG waiver, that we are able to get somewhat uranium, but not to the extent that we desire. Okay? Next is Sense and Tech. Okay? Sense and Tech. So what are the relations we are having in Sense and Tech? India have developed Pan-Africa E-Network project. Now this is in this what we have done, we have given the satellite connectivity to all the 54 countries of Africa. Satellite connectivity to all the 54 countries of Africa, so that they could have their e-education, e-health, e-commerce, mineral mapping and infotainment. Infotainment is information and entertainment. Entertainment means TV. This is we are having the television, we are having dish antennas, that is entertainment. Sorry. Next is water purification project. Water purification project. Again, India is building a water purification project in Africa. Next is that we are supplying cheap medicines and equipments. As India is known as a center for health, as a less pricey or less costly health destination. So lot of many national people, they came to India for their health treatments. Clear hai this much? Now next we are going to look at the challenges. So in challenges, number one is the political instability. So as I have already told you that Africa, since it is having the problem of conflict among the tribes, governance issues, internal struggles among the religious sections or the tribal sections, even the terrorism is a result which is creating political instability. And always remember, wherever there is a political instability, there would also be economic instability, and because of the economic instability, there is going to be social depreciation. They would be having poor health indicators, poor education indicators, they would be facing a lot of diseases, they would be having high mortality rates and all that. So all these things is connected. Economically, China is one such challenge for India, because China is investing 4 times of what India is investing. And always remember, money always wins. Since India is not able to match the investment, therefore many African nations, they will sideline with China in the international front rather than sidelining or rather than supporting India. Second is non-tariff barriers in India. Now non-tariff barriers, especially like we are having very lengthy procedure at the customs office, which creates a non-tariff barrier for the African exports in India. Next is that India and African Union were deciding to sign a FTA, that is a free trade agreement, FTA, which was unfortunately not concluded yet. Next is that Indian firms, they fear investment risk. Indian firms fear investment risk. Why? Because of the political instability. They think that if we will invest and something happened, then their investment will go down. Next, strategic. China is increasing its military presence in Indian Ocean as well as African nations. In both places, China is increasing its military presence with the building up of naval bases, air bases. They are having their warships in the African nations. Next is people to people. Now this is very important, that we must eliminate stereotypes and prejudices against the Africans. What is happening in India is that in India, a lot of African nationals, they are studying in India, and unfortunately India have developed some types of stereotypes, and they are acting against them. Many a times there are incidences where the locals have even attacked, have used violent force against the African nationals. Therefore we need to remove this particular thing. Clear? Next is, what will be the way forward? ठीक है, आगे कैसे चलना है? What should be the way forward? Then you can write that we must enhance our economic cooperation, trade and investment. We must enhance our economic cooperation, trade and investment. We must promote technological transfer. Okay, why? Because Africa is a nation which right now needs technology to boost its economy, to improve its capabilities, to improve its environmental benchmarks, to improve its social benchmarks. Therefore they need a lot of technology transfer. Next, to increase or to help them in social progress. How we can help them? As we have seen that India is doing telemedicine and tele-education, so that their literacy rate improve, their health indicators improve. Okay. Next is, we can help them in sustainable development, climate change and humanitarian assistance. For an example, when COVID came, so India was able to send medical equipments, India was able to send vaccine to the African nations which were unable to afford them, both financially especially, and also because of the less technology. Therefore India was helping them. Again, whenever there is some conflict, then again India helps them in whatever way these nations want from India. Next is that again we can have a South-South cooperation, and India can be a voice for these southern countries. And then next we can do the security cooperation, or we can help them in the security way also. So what you are going to write in the conclusion? So this is a beautiful conclusion that you will write in your answer, that India wants an integrated, prosperous and peaceful. India wants a integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, not by any other country, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. ठीक है? I hope you have understood this. So this is all on the India-Africa relations. Thank you very much.